specifically as you matter here. And for the last 2 weeks, we wrapped up a discussion about the messy but necessary nature of community. And tonight, as we finish this series on the beloved community, we want to reflect on the truth that it won't build itself. It won't build itself. And that a prophetic community has no passive members. I remember when this whole thing started for me, I was asked by a mentor of mine, a man named Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, to attend a meeting. And ironically, there's people that are here tonight that aren't usually here tonight that can attest to the truth of what I'm saying. Actually, the person who's in the story that I was going to mention is here. Mubin is here. I didn't know he was going to be here, but I was going to talk about him in the story. I was asked to attend this meeting, and our community at that point had come to this kind of really important and kind of tense place where our leadership felt like people weren't really holding their own. People weren't really doing what needed to be done to kind of get community to where it needed to be. And so there was a meeting. It was kind of like a powwow. And I had been asked to attend the meeting, but being the would-be rebel that I am, I intentionally and deliberately didn't go to the meeting. And my excuse was that I had to mow the lawn. Because you have to have an excuse if you're going to just not show up to a meeting. And we had this kind of ride-along lawnmower, and I was wearing jean coveralls, like, what do you call them? Yeah, overalls. And riding this lawnmower, and as I was riding the lawnmower, outwardly, selflessly serving Gigi. You guys know Gigi? The greater good. Gigi stands for the greater good. Outwardly, I'm serving Gigi, the greater good, the more important task of mowing the lawn. But in my heart, I've got this whole kind of tense argument going on about why is there another meeting? Because you know, in communities, people love to meet. Sometimes we have a meeting to plan what we're going to meet about. But in order to do that, we need to have a meeting about the meeting. So I was like, there's another meeting. I was like, we got work to do, man. This lawn's not going to mow itself. So I'm like riding along on this lawnmower, angry at whatever I was angry at. And then from probably about 25, 50 yards back, I hear Mubin going, Usama, Usama. And I look back and he's like, cut the lawnmower. And I was like, so I cut the lawnmower. I was like, what? And he like runs out and I run up and he goes, Sheikh Hamza wants you in this meeting. I was like, meeting? I'm trying to mow the lawn, right? So I walk into this meeting, everyone's all like ready and proper for this meeting. I walk in smelling like gasoline, wearing these coveralls, and I sit down and so what was happening was there was essentially people being assigned to different roles in this meeting. So-and-so, I want you to do such and such, and so-and-so, I want you to do such and such. And then Sheikh Hamza said to me, he said, and I would like for you, Usama, to lead outreach in the community. And all of my rebellion fell, and I just responded and said, Labbaik, which is what we're taught to say when we are given instruction from our elders or from our leadership, assuming obviously that the instructions are not harmful to anybody, which why would a leader tell you to do anything harmful? Labbaika is the same thing people will be saying when they go on Hajj, this pilgrimage to Mecca. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, here I am at your service. So he said, I want you to direct outreach, and I was like, labbaik. I was like, okay. But in my heart, I was like, I just want to mow the lawn. And what does that even mean, to do outreach? And what does it mean? I had no idea what that even meant. So I carried all of that tension with me, and we'll maybe come back to that in a bit. But you probably all felt frustrated at some time, to some degree, in whatever community you're in, and wherever you do community. And that's a natural thing. And sometimes we question how much we want to participate. We've talked for the last several weeks about 3 possible options. One, we call the Forrest Gump, where you just check out and run, Forrest, run, and don't look back. And I talked about the times I've wanted to do that. The other is that you be a passive object in your community, that you just let other people do the work, you let other people make the decisions, you let other people do the hard task of making community happen. And the third, which is the only one we can really entertain as a possibility if we want to be healthy as individuals and as a community, is that we be active subjects in our communities. One of my favorite stories of the life example of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is when he's sitting, it's narrated that he was sitting with a group of his companions and they got hungry. And so the Prophet told them to prepare a sheep. This is a timely story because there's going to be a lot of sheep being slaughtered in a couple weeks. No disrespect to our vegan friends and family members, but Muslims are about to be slaughtering a whole bunch of sheep and lamb, and in some cases camels and other things, what we call the Eid of the sacrifice, the festival of the sacrifice. So this is a timely story that the Prophet tells them to prepare a sheep. So one of the companions says, I will slaughter the sheep. And then one of the companions says, I'll skin the sheep. And then one of them says, I will cook the sheep. And then the Prophet, peace be upon him, says, and I'll gather the firewood. And the companion said something very interesting. They said, O Messenger of Allah, let us gather the firewood for you. We're happy to do that for you. And he said, I know that you'd be willing to do it for me, but I don't want to distinguish myself from you, because God dislikes it that somebody distinguish themselves from their companions. It's actually disliked that God, the Creator, dislikes it that somebody would distinguish themselves from their companions. And it's interesting that this was a community where everybody knew they had a role and everybody had a part. And the interesting part about it is that they had a common goal, and because their goal was clear, they were all able to identify a task, and that they themselves came up with the way that they could contribute. They weren't waiting for directives. All it was that, hey, we want to eat and we're going to slaughter this lamb. So everybody came up with, well, what can I do? One of them says, I'll slaughter it. The other one says, I'll skin it. I don't know why the brother who chose to skin it chose that job. If you've ever seen a lamb, it's not the most... We went fishing this weekend, and after my kids saw what happens after you catch the fish, once the fish was prepared, they didn't want to eat it. Because once you see, people think like food just shows up on your plate. Oh, it's a cute little package. There's actually guts and stuff inside of these animals that we eat. It's kind of gross, sorry. But so one says he's going to skin it. The other one says he's going to cook it. But the Prophet volunteered to serve and be involved in it. They all wanted to serve the Prophet. And what are the lessons that we can take from that? The first one is, no one is above serving other people. It's another kind of, I think, almost for me, a divine gift, if I could call it that. That today marks the anniversary of the passing of one of my teachers. And my wife just texted me that as I was in my office getting ready. And I was actually going to tell a story about this teacher today too. It's a trip. That just call it a coincidence if you want to. But there was this great sage and sheikh or master, a spiritual master, who lived way out in the desert in Morocco. Today it would take you, if you landed in Casablanca, it would take you probably 18 to 20 hours to get to this place out in the desert to go visit where this person's school was. And a man came from London and he wanted to visit this scholar. And so imagine flying now from the UK, getting to Morocco, then from landing in Casa, now traveling a day into the desert to go meet this person. Because this is how serious people used to take the proposition of meeting an enlightened human being. They used to take it serious enough that they would travel and they would go to great effort to meet these people. So he gets there into the desert, and it's lunchtime. And in Morocco and in many traditional cultures, this is one of my favorite things about visiting some of these places, is it's the opposite of the help yourself culture. It's the complete opposite. Like at lunchtime or dinner time, somebody comes around and washes your hands for you, so you don't have to get up and go to wash your hands. Like they have a thing, like this beautifully designed hand washing things, and someone brings it around and they wash your hands for you. So this guy who's come all the way from the UK sits down, and he's really excited to meet this sheikh, and they're setting up the lunch, and then someone comes by and washes his hands. And so he says to the person who was his guide to get there, he says, when are we going to meet the sheikh? Like, I came all the way here from the UK to meet the sheikh. He said, he just washed your hands. He just washed your hands. So right, you're looking for what? This person is going to come in all of the bells and whistles, but sometimes the person washing your hands is the one that you could be benefiting most from. So people who really understand this truth that a prophetic community does not have any passive members live like that. And it's really important for us also to note that a healthy community is not a one-woman or one-man show. And Ta'leef is no exception to that. A lot of people, when they think Ta'leef, they think Usama Canon. And I'll tell you, if Ta'leef was dependent on me alone, it would have flopped a long time ago. It would have sunk a long time ago. It wouldn't be anything if it was dependent on Usama Canon. I'm unfortunately the person who has the tribulation of and the test of things being attributed to me that I didn't necessarily do, or I don't necessarily deserve credit for. The women and the men behind the scenes that are actually doing the work, actually making the stuff of community happen, those are the people who really hold Ta'leef up. It's not a one-man show. And if you think about one of the greatest challenges for a healthy community is when it's built upon a personality. When that personality dies, the community often dies with it. But if it's built upon principle and built upon truth, then it's going to outlive the people who initially started it. We pray that all of our communities will be communities of principle and not just communities of personality. Also, to think about the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, as someone who was not only a teacher and not only a leader and not only a guide, but believed by his companions to be a messenger from God who received revelation, and not only a messenger from God who received revelation, but the last messenger from God ever to receive the last revelation ever. And with that, the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, was willing to serve the people around him. After the first migration that the Prophet's companions make, and a really important part of our history that we don't think a lot about, the first migration that the companions of the Prophet made when fleeing from the persecution of Mecca was to Habasha, or near modern-day Ethiopia, Habasha, Ethiopia. And they were received there, and the Prophet told them, go there because there's a just king. And this was a Christian country. This was a country that was it was almost entirely Christian. And the Prophet sent his companions there. And they were received, and you all are familiar with the story, they're received by the Negus, who eventually embraces Islam, but is someone who's part of an old Christian community. Eventually he embraces Islam, the Prophet's companions come back from there, and then the second migration happens eventually to Medina, as you know. Later on, the companions of the Negus came to visit the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, in Medina. فَقَامَ يَخْدُمُهُمْ بِنَفْسِهِ. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, stood up and went to serve them himself. And again the companion said, نَكْفِيكَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. The companion said, let us serve them for you, O Messenger of Allah. And he said, إِنُّهُمْ كَانُوا لِأَصْحَابِنَا مُكْرِمِينَ وَأُحِبُّ أَنْ أُكَافِئَهُمْ. He said, these are people who were generous to my companions, and I want to repay them for their kindness. These are people who are generous to my companions, and I want to repay them for their kindness. So, you know, this is why we're taught in our tradition, Sayyid al-Qawm Khadimuhum, that a people's leader is their servant. How do we understand that? A people's leader is their servant. There's two ways you can understand it amongst others. One is that if a person is really a leader, then they're going to be serving the people who they lead. If you watch them, if you just watch what they do, they're going to be serving the people who they lead. The other way you understand it is that if you ever want to be a leader, you've got to start with service. And there's a bunch of problems there. Number one, you should never want to be a leader. I know that's kind of that's a buzzkill for some people. You should never want to be a leader for the sake of leadership. You know, some people, there was a a survey done, and they said something like 30-something% of people between the age of 18 and 25 preferred fame over contentment. They would rather be famous than content. So some people want to be famous just for the sake of being famous. They want to be leaders just for the sake of being leaders. We shouldn't want leadership. In our tradition, we're taught that it is not given to somebody who wants it or who will covet it once they have it. And the last sickness that leaves the heart of even the most sincere of the spiritual aspirants is love of leadership. May Allah take that out of our hearts. So you shouldn't want leadership. But if you're on a path to leadership, then the way to be an authentic, good, prophetic leader is to be a servant. And this is why they were asked about the state of the Prophet in his home, and they said that he, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, was in the menial service of his family, doing things that people didn't typically like to do. May Allah make it easy for us, and may Allah make us more service-oriented people. So we've got to take every single chance we can to serve, every single opportunity we have to serve, anytime. And no one arena of your life should make you focus so much on it that it stops you from serving in other arenas of your life. One of my teachers told me, he said, all of this stuff we do out here in the community service and activism, that's all practice. I said, practice for what? He said, practice for when you get home. Practice for when you, because we tend to think of it as the opposite, right? I go home, do my family time, but my real worth isn't serving the community. Your real measure actually begins at home. It begins at home. And don't talk to my wife for kids, because we'll just let that be where it is. But you can also make the place where you work an opportunity to serve. Whatever work you do, it can also be an opportunity to serve other people. And it's really sad, like this afternoon I held the door open for a lady coming into the market after me, and you never know, that could go any way. You never know. You might get a thank you, you might get slapped in the face, you might get told off for holding the door. You know, in the old culture, it doesn't matter whether it's a lady or a man or whoever it is, someone's coming in behind you, you're supposed to hold the door and let them come in. The problem is that once you do that, another person comes behind them, and then another person, and then pretty soon you're the doorman, and you're like, welcome. Like at Trader Joe's, I don't know if you guys have ever done this, but the carts are kind of all up in this like really weird cement thing, and it just feels wrong to like take one when someone's like behind you. It just feels wrong. You're like, man, that's so selfish. So you give one to the first person. I go, thank you. You're like, I'm Muslim, don't worry. And then they take the cart, but then the next person comes, and you're like, thank you. Imagine give me a Trader Joe's outfit, man. I got it. But it's an honor to be able to serve. But your place of livelihood can also be a place that you serve. You know, it's all about intention. It's all about what intention you make in your heart. But I thought about this lady when I opened the door. She just walked by. She didn't say anything. I wasn't really dressed well. Maybe she thought I was just like a door guy. But she didn't even like acknowledge it. Then the big question gets raised. Why are you serving? Are you serving because you want people to recognize it and to say thank you? Are you serving because it's the right thing to do? Are you serving because you want a plaque or an award? Are you serving because it's the right thing and the right way to be? Someone once said, we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. And our beloved champ Muhammad Ali said, your service to others is the rent that you pay for your room here on earth. Your service to others is the rent that you pay for your room here on earth. So be creative, and don't think of any act as insignificant. Never belittle any act that you do. Think of it as insignificant. It could well be that one thing that you do is the thing that gains you divine grace. It could be that one action you do with enough sincerity is what gains you Allah's mercy and Allah's pleasure. You've probably heard me talk about the cat lady here at Tatleef. Some people call her the cat lady. I call her the teacher. I call her the teacher because it seems like every day, it might be a few days a week, but it seems like every day she shows up and she feeds the cats and she has water for them, and she's got them all, they've all got shots and stuff. I think she may have even moved on to the raccoons, because if you've ever been into the parking lot here, they have or the cats just reach out to the raccoons. They made a truce and they let them share the food and stuff. But she shows up like clockwork, and she never misses a day where she's coming to feed the cats and to give them their water. And I call her the teacher because of her consistency. And if she's not going to be there, you know what she does? She assigns somebody to fill in for her that day. Like, I'm not going to be there on such and such day, so can you go feed the cats? I was sitting with a teacher of mine here in the office, and in the front part of the office you can see out into the parking lot. And this teacher was wearing Eastern clothes. He's wearing a turban, he's wearing a robe, and he had a cane. And we're just sitting in my office, and the cat lady came up. And he said to me, "What is that lady doing?" I said, "She's feeding the cats." He said, "Do you mind if I go talk to her?" And I was like, this is going to be so awkward. This guy comes out wearing the stuff and trying to talk to the cat lady. I'm like, sure. So I'm walking out, and he walks up to her and he says, "I just wanted to say thank you for taking care of the cats. God bless you." She's like, "Oh, thank you, thank you." Then we walked by his side. He said to me, "Do you know why I walked up to her?" I said, "Why?" He said, "I wanted to get close enough to see whether she was an angel or a human being." And he never told me the answer. I think she's a human. I mean, I think, but God knows. But she comes to feed the cat. And it's like, you know, if you walk out there and say thank you to her, she's not like, finally, someone recognized my service to the feline community. She's just about that service life. May Allah make us about that service life. So my resolution, right? How do I reconcile the lawnmower story? You know, you have to go to another meeting to plan. In that moment, when Mubin was like, "Cut the lawnmower," I couldn't see even what I see in front of me right now for the life of me. I couldn't see in that moment ending up working for the state of California and becoming a chaplain and sitting with people from Tracy to San Quentin on death row, talking to people behind three layers of bars about God and about the struggle. I couldn't see traveling all over the world or meeting the people that I've met, or seeing the hundreds and hundreds of people who have found their spiritual home in Islam. I couldn't see any of that coming. I just wanted to mow the lawn. And to be really honest with you, right now, if you ask me what would you rather be doing, would you rather be up here talking or mowing the lawn? Some of you know what I'd rather be doing. You know what I'd rather be doing. I'd rather be up here talking to you. I'd rather be mowing the lawn. We were doing dishes this morning after breakfast up at the center, and Noura, who's the cook up there, and she's an absolutely brilliant woman, God bless her, she said be there at 8:30 to help me cook breakfast. And so I was there at 8:46. I was close. She didn't say anything, but she was, you know, she said cook the bacon, halal bacon, cook the bacon, cook the eggs. And I was like, yes. I was like, I just want to stay here and cook. I just want to crack the eggs, you know what I mean? Cook the bacon, that's all I want to do. But Allah wanted other than that. And this is one of the most difficult things when it comes to service, is actually being wherever Allah puts you. Just be where Allah puts you. Because, you know, when you've got an infant, you're looking at the infant and you're thinking, oh my God, they're so cute, and you know, besides having to change their diaper and clean up some, you know, some barf every now and again, they're just so cute. Look, that infant's going to become a toddler, and then they're going to start breaking stuff, and then you're like, oh my God, you know. But like Imam Zayd said, whoever made up the terrible twos never had a 12-year-old, right? The terrible twos. What about the terrible 20s, right? God help us all. So wherever you are, there you are. That's where Allah has you. And wherever the people in your life that you're set up to serve, that's where Allah has you. And you've got to be in that moment. This brother right here spent 27 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And by the grace of Allah, was able to come home and sit by his mother's bed for 11 months as he watched her transition out of this world. And she said, baby, I waited for you. Isn't that what she said? She said, baby, I waited for you. Right? And so to be able to sit next to your mother's bed, and when he was down and I was working there, we never thought he was going to come home. But he came home and were able to be with your mother. And that's where Allah put you. May Allah always put us where we're supposed to be. Say Ameen. But it's difficult to accept that. So then you say, like, okay, what do you really do here? You know, like people ask all the time, what does Ta'leef really do? And half the time I want to say, I don't know. I don't really know exactly what we do, and I'm not supposed to give that answer. But there are moments when it becomes crystal clear. It becomes crystal clear what we do. And a moment like that for me was when we got a call Monday morning in the office, and it was some sister. I don't remember her name. I didn't actually speak to her directly. So if you're here, please introduce yourself. Or if you're watching online, please reach out. And she said, look, I don't know what you all do over there. And we were thinking, good, because we don't know either what we do. She said, I don't know what you all do over there. She said, but my little brother came home, and for the first time in his life, he said, I love you. And he cleaned his room. And we were like, that's what we do over there. We make kids clean their room. If only I could get my kids also to clean their room, and we'll be in business, right? God help us all. God help us all. But that's what it's about, is seeing the potential in people to be able to do good, and helping people see where they can serve. And sometimes you've got to get them off of a lawnmower. Sometimes you've got to get them off of a lawnmower. Sometimes you've got to get them onto a lawnmower. But if you can get them to tell their loved ones, I love you, and if you can get them to clean their rooms, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. I've got two options amongst others of how you can help me and how you can help Tatlif. One of them is to volunteer. And you'd be really surprised at how much we can use your skill set. We can use your expertise, we can use your insight, we can use your knowledge, we can use your connections to do the work that we do. And this is still an organization largely ran off of volunteers. In our Chicago campus, we only have we have basically one employee split between two people. And in Chicago, for those of you watching from Chicago or visiting from Chicago, or those of you who visited Chicago, the crowds, the space we're in now, are bursting at the seams. MashaAllah. I mean, it's insane. It's insane the amount of people that come in Chicago, such a big, beautiful city. All of that is happening based off of volunteers. This is an organization that started and is still an organization rooted in volunteerism. And really, to be honest, I would even say instead of volunteerism, rooted in service. So on your way out tonight, you'll see a table where people are, Eric and Maya, who you saw earlier, are there to talk to you about ways that you might be able to contribute and volunteer at Tatlif, and we would welcome that, and we would be very, very happy if you're able to do that. One of the things that I valued from my time living in the Muslim majority world is that community centers, and particularly the ones I was honored to live in and study in, they were ones where everybody showed up ready to do something. They were never communities where one person or two people were doing all of the work. Everybody was contributing. And we hope and pray that this space and our space in Chicago will continue to be like that. And the second is to sign up to become a monthly donor to Tatlif. And those of you who know me know, and if you're here for the first time, I apologize, because I never, that's not true, rarely ask for people to give. Rarely. So some of you right now, especially some of us who have experiences growing up where every time there's a conversation, there's an ask for donations. That's not really what we do here. It's not. But I will say this. Our community, this space, the services that we offer, the employees that we're able to employ, and Layla, who's here, who's our bookkeeper, can attest, one of our bookkeepers can attest to this. Most of the people who support the work here are not themselves beneficiaries of Tatlif. Most of the people who actually give might not ever even show up, but they believe in what's happening enough to say, I'm going to contribute financially to that. I told you the story before of a brother who wrote a $1,000 check. He said, and I accidentally put another zero. He said, and I felt bad erasing the zero. So I just sent a $10,000 check. And we were like, man, little zero never hurt nobody, right? Just keep adding zeros. Keep adding zeros. But that's the kind of, and this is a brother who lives, he's been here 2 or 3 times, but believes in it. People like that, and a young person, someone who believes in the work. And so we've had this conversation about, well, how do we get Tatlif to be sustained by the people who show up every week? And often the response is, no, you don't understand. That's a community that doesn't have any wealth. Well, you got to hide your latte cups then. And you better wear different shoes when you show up. Am I being too honest for you? Am I being too honest for you right now? Huh? Yeah. Huh? You say, well, no, we don't have any money. But well, then look, a falafel corner is officially closed on Sunday nights, right? You can't go to falafel corner.